Moscow, Idaho, Part 2, Timeline.
My name is Chief James Fry with the Moscow Police Department. I'm going to be reading from my notes today because I want the information you received to be extremely accurate.
First press conference, University of Idaho, November 16th, 2022.
Agencies that are involved in this task force include Lake County Sheriff's Office, the Idaho State Police, and the Federal Bureau of Investigations. As we continue our investigation, we have learned that Ethan and Xana were at a party on campus, and Madison and Kaylee were at a downtown bar. They arrived home sometime after 1:45.
This is a Home Team Productions.
The facts of the case that we know right now. We know that these homicides occurred in the early morning hours of Sunday, November 13th. Around noon, Moscow officers received a call of an unconscious person. Officers discovered the bodies of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Goncalves inside the residence on King Road. The four were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time. There was no sign of forced entry into the residence. Investigators are continuing to collect evidence at the scene. Investigators are working to develop a timeline to relevant events. Autopsies are taking place today on all the victims so we can continue to gather evidence and solve the crime.
1 a.m., November 13th, 2022. Bethany and Dylan, the two surviving roommates, are home at 1122 King Road and call it a night. They head to their bedrooms, which are located on the first floor of the off-campus six-bedroom home. Initial reports stated that they went to their bedrooms and they locked their doors that night. Ethan and Xana were said to be at a party on campus on the evening of Saturday, November 12th, 2022. And this was stated at the first press conference, November 16th, 2022. However, law enforcement is now asking for the public to fill in the gaps for Ethan and Xana that evening. At 1:45 a.m., authorities say Ethan and Xana make it back to 1122 King Road. However, law enforcement has never cited their source for this information.
Investigators are working to follow up on all leads and to identify a person of interest. Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there's no threat to the community, and as we have stated, please stay vigilant, report any suspicious activity, and be aware of your surroundings at all times. What we don't know, the identity and location of the suspect, the location of the knife or any clothing that was worn by the suspect. Currently, we have 25 plus investigators working this case, as well as assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Idaho State Police. We're reviewing video that has been collected, but we are asking citizens to contact us with any information you may have that will help in this investigation. Once again, we're asking anyone with a tip to call the tip line at 208-883-7180. At this time, I would like to introduce the University of Idaho President, Scott Green.
Meet President of the University of Idaho, Coomer Scott Green. He's been the president from July 2019 to present day.
Thank you, Chief Fry. I'm Scott Green, president of the University of Idaho, and with me is Tori Lawrence. He's our provost, and Blaine Eccles, our dean of students, will be available for questions after all of the statements are made. The crime, to us, this crime and the loss of these young lives is just simply beyond comprehension. While our small community is certainly not immune to such things, it's not a situation our close-knit campus is used to dealing with. First, my deepest condolences to the families. And friends of Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, and Madison. Excuse me. Their loss has been devastating, and they were bright lights in our community and are deeply missed and remain in our thoughts and our prayers. We've been working with Moscow police since we were notified on Sunday of the crime. We've helped when asked and continually pushed for information whenever possible, knowing that we cannot interfere with the important work and good investigations that are occurring. We just want justice for these victims. Our focus at the university is to support our students and our employees. We are encouraging students and employees to take care of themselves as we head into Thanksgiving break. I want to take a moment to commend our faculty and staff who have been on the front lines helping our students.
President Green was a member of Kappa Sigma and graduated from the University of Idaho in 1984 with an accounting degree. President Green was the class president while attending the University of Idaho, as well as Green was born and raised in Moscow, Idaho. President Green furthered his education by getting an MBA from Harvard Business School. November 13th, 2022, between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., that is when the university is saying that the 4 students were stabbed to death by a knife, no forced entry. The 911 call was around noon, and it was because of the totality of the evidence at the scene that led to investigators saying that this was an isolated, targeted incident. Check it out, November 16th, 2022's first press conference again. Here is the media Q&A.
So at this time, I'm going to open it up to some questions that I'm sure you have, and we'll do the best we can to answer those for you.
Hello, Chief Ray.
Hello.
Thank you for having us. I'm Amanda Rowley with Creme 2 News. You mentioned that there's an indication that it's an isolated, targeted incident, and there is an individual somewhere. Can you give us a reason as to why there's that belief there is a suspect? And can you also give a little more information on the forced entry? There's no sign of forced entry, but was the door, did it seem like any of the entries were left unlocked by any means?
I'll answer the last part there just because it's at the front end of my mind. We're not 100% sure if the door was unlocked, but there was no damage to anything, and the door was still open when we got there.
And my first question,
Yeah.
if you'd like me to read.
No, I think I have it. In these cases, we take the totality of the things that we see, and they're very dynamic, right? And they're very big, and there's a lot of information, and we try to take that information, and some of it we can't share with you, correct? But we try to take that information, we try to make the best educated decision we can. We review that as a team with our detectives, along with our prosecutors, along with the university, and we try to make that best decision on that. So we, at that time, believed that there was no a threat, and our goal is to provide safety for this community. That's why we're bringing in the resources we're bringing. We want a close to this, and we want to do everything we can to let the people in our community know that we care. We want them to feel safe. We want them to be safe, and we're going to do everything we can to do that.
And if I could add one more question. You asked for videos or anything from the community to help put together that timeline. We obtained a copy of Twitch video, and family members of the Gonsalves family were able to identify Maddie and Kaylee in those videos at a food truck ordering food. Is the police department, our investigators, aware of that video, and has it helped put together that timeline?
We are aware of that video, and it has helped. It gives us a time and space where we know that two of our victims were, and that helps us a ton, and we'll continue to follow up all leads that we can and continue to gather those.
Any indication of a party at the home that night?
And this will be the last one, okay? I understand. Not that we know of, not at the home. We know that the other, let me get the names exactly right here. We know that Xana and Ethan were at a different party on campus.
Thank you.
But that timeline will still help us if other people know about that.
Thank you.
Chief Wright, John Webb with KHQ. On September 12th, there was a vandal alert that was sent out about a potential stabbing threat on Paradise Path. Does this have any connection with what we've seen so far?
Not that we know of it, but we're following up every lead. Every piece of information we get, we are following up to ensure that nothing has gone unturned. We want to have the individual identified, who is the suspect of this eventually. So we are literally looking into every aspect of everything.
And you guys have said repeatedly that there's no threat to the public, but we don't know who the suspect is. We don't know where he's at. How is there no threat to the public at this point?
Well, that's kind of an unknown. Like I said, we took the information that we had at the time, but we do need to be aware the individual is still out there, right? We need to be vigilant. We need to watch out for our neighbors. We're a community policing community. We've said that for years, and it's a community that watches out for each other. And we need to continue to do that until we can close this off and make an arrest.
Why has there been such limited information over the past couple days? I mean, we're almost 4 days into this. Why has it been so limited?
Yeah, it's a difficult, we have a lot of information coming in, and, we have tried to push out some information through press releases, but the reality is, I probably should have been standing here a day or so ago, but I'm here now. We're going to continue to be here. We're going to continue to give you the information we can. We care about this community. I care about this community. I've worked here for 27 years. I want this community to be the safest community around. So
The mayor's called it a crime of passion. Is there any indication that that's true?
we're looking into every aspect of this. I'm not going to stipulate whether it's one thing or another. We're going to continue to investigate until evidence will get that. So,
One last
somebody else?
question, if I could, Chief. Have we looked at any boyfriends or any ex-boyfriends, any spouses as a potential suspect?
I will tell you, we are looking at everyone. Every tip we get, every lead we get, there's no one that we're not going to talk to. There's no one we're not going to interview. There's no one that we're not going to look into. And we're going to do our due diligence. We're going to make sure that nothing goes unturned and that we do everything we can with the assistance of all the resources we have to get a final answer.
Thanks, Chief Wright.
So there were, I'm Emma Epperly with the Spokes Interview. Hi. So there were other roommates who lived at that residence. Were the roommates home at the time of the attack?
There was other people home at that time, but we are not just focusing just on them. We're focusing on everybody that may be coming and going from that residence.
So since they were home, was it a hostage situation?
No, it was not.
And then they didn't call it into police, so were they injured?
They were not injured, but like I said, we're still following up with everybody that could have been in that area.
And how can you say it's a targeted attack if you don't have a suspect?
Like I said, we take the totality of the situation. We try to make the best bit of information we can with everything that comes in, and then we make our decision off of that. So at this time, I'm not going to expand upon that. But like I've said, we do have a suspect out somewhere, and we are looking for that individual to solve this.
Hi, Rachel Sun, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I just want to clarify something you said earlier. Over the past couple of days, the information that we've been getting is there's not a threat to the public. Then earlier I heard you say you can't be sure that there is no threat. I just want to clarify what your stance is on that at this time.
So we still believe it's a targeted attack, But the reality is there's still a person out there who committed 4 horrible, horrible crimes. So I think we got to go back to there is a threat out there still, possibly. We don't know. We don't believe it's going to be to anybody else. But we all have to be aware of our surroundings and make sure that we're watching out for each other.
Okay, and then one other follow-up. I know you said when the call came in, it was for an unconscious person, and also that was a stabbing. It seems, just from an outside perspective looking in, like that would be not the first thing a person calling in would think.
You're right. But the report that we got was that it was an unconscious individual. It wasn't until our officers arrived on scene, went in to do caregiving check on the individual who was unconscious that we found the scene that we found.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Heather Roberts with ABC News. Just to follow up on what she asked, so the other 2 roommates were there at the time of the attack?
All the information that we have from our investigation is that, yes, they were.
Okay, but they were unhurt.
That is correct.
So is there any explanation as to why it took so long then for someone to call 911? You have surviving witnesses to an incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there. So, we don't know why that call came in at noon and not in the middle of the night. Would have we loved for that to have happened? Yes, but that's not how it took place. So that's why we're investigating everything still to try to pull all the pieces together.
Were they one of the people, were they the 911 caller?
At this point in time, I'm not going to divulge who our 911 caller is, just because I want to keep the integrity of the investigation at this point, okay?
Okay. And last question, are you able to tell whether the same weapon was used on all 4 victims?
That's why we're having the autopsies done. The autopsy will confirm that and hopefully collect some evidence for us, even from those. That's why you do the autopsies, is to try to be thorough and try to gather more. So we'll leave that would probably be something that would come out later.
Okay.
Excuse me, Derek Shug, Fox News Digital. Was there anything missing in the home, or were the purses still there? Any robbery attempt, anything like that?
Nothing that we have identified. And I'm going to take about 2 more questions, all right?
Hi, I'm Tim with the Daily Evergreen. I was just wondering, were the 2 other individuals present at the home when police responded at noon?
Yes.
Okay.
Chief, if you don't mind elaborating a bit more on those 2 people. Well, was it 2 people? What have those people shared about the circumstances of that night, what they saw or didn't see?
Well, I'm not going to go into what they shared that night. Obviously, that's part of our investigation. That's part of the information that we're trying to build our complete story with. So as far as that goes, we're not going to go any further into what they know and what they don't know.
How many were there?
We believe 2.
Chief, have you looked into the social media accounts of all the different victims, and we understand that one may have had an account linked to her Instagram account. Have you looked into those accounts? Have you seen any sort of threats made to any of the individuals?
So we are looking at all resources. We got, like I said, the Federal Bureau of Investigation helping us. We got our detectives, our forensic detectives looking into that. We're trying to pull this whole picture. We're looking at everything that we can look at, social media, et So to answer your question, yes, we are.
Were the victims all found in one part of the house?
I'm not going to divulge that either. That's part of our investigation. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close this off. But if you have any questions for the university, we'll open that up at this point in time.
Who has not had a chance to ask a question? Yes, over here.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thanks. Actually, I had a question for the chief, so I don't know.
Okay, well, you want to pass it?
Okay. What is the university doing to make their students feel safe?
Yeah, great question. At this time, I think I'll turn this over to Blaine, who's been dealing directly with our students and dealing with those that truly still feel unsafe despite some of the assurances and things that we're doing.
That was it. That was the first press conference of the University of Idaho for slain students. 4 days would pass until there would be a second press conference by law enforcement. Let's check it out.
This incident has shaken our community, has continued to shake our community, and we continue to mourn for the victims. We will continue to vigorously pursue the investigation and pursue justice in this case. It is a complex and terrible crime, and it will take some time.
What is so complex about a targeted, isolated incident?
Here's what we've determined so far. On the evening of November 12th, Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Mulligan were at a local bar and were later at a food truck in downtown Moscow. They arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. on the morning of November 13th. Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle were at the Sigma Chi house before also arriving home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Two surviving roommates were also out in the community, and they returned home at approximately 1 a.m. and did not wake up until later that morning. On the morning of November 13th, at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed to the Whitcomb Dispatch Center reporting an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence and was made from the phone of one of the surviving roommates. Moscow Police Department officers responded and located 4 victims, 2 on the 2nd floor and 2 on the 3rd floor. The Latah County coroners conducted autopsies, and detectives have been provided with the results of those autopsies. We know that the autopsies confirmed the identity of the 4 victims, determined the cause and manner of death as homicide by stabbing, and determined that it was likely all 4 victims who were asleep during the attack. Some of the victims had defensive wounds, and each victim was stabbed multiple times. There was no sign of sexual assault. Investigators have determined 2 areas of interest within the city and have provided maps which are on our Facebook page and on our website. And these are areas that they have canvassed for additional surveillance video and tips, and have contacted several residents in the areas. The areas are generally south of Taylor Avenue to Palouse River Drive and west of Highway 95. Detectives have also canvassed several other neighborhoods looking for evidence, looking for additional surveillance video, and contacting residents and speaking to them to see if they may have heard or seen something. I want to address several areas of speculation, conjecture, and misinformation that has circulated on social media platforms and otherwise. We do not believe the following individuals are involved in this crime: the 2 surviving roommates, a male seen at the grub truck food vendor downtown, specifically wearing a white hoodie, a private party who provided rides home to Kaylee and Madison in the early morning hour of November 13th. Additionally, the identity of the 911 caller and the 911 call have not been released, so any information out there is speculation about that. Investigators are aware that multiple phone calls from Madison and Kaylee's phone were made to a male subject. Any online reports stating that the victims had been tied and gagged are not accurate. Detectives seized the contents of 3 dumpsters on King Road and searched those dumpsters in an effort to find additional evidence, but nothing of note was discovered. Early in the investigation, local businesses were canvassed in an effort to see if any fixed blade type knives may have recently been purchased. And currently, there are no suspects in custody, and we have not located a weapon. I want to assure you that every investigator involved will continue to put all of...
Law enforcement early on with the murders at the University of Idaho campus were tight-lipped and continue to be. What seemed to be an isolated target job became an instant complex case. Media persons asked the following questions at the second press conference. Here they are.
Good afternoon. I'm Ted Williams, Fox News. You all have said that these killings are targeted. Can you share with us why you believe they are targeted killings? And do you know who, if any, of the victims were the actual targets of the killings?
As we stated earlier in the previous press release, or press conference, we believe they're targeted because we take a totality of all the circumstances that we're looking at. Do we know any one person that it was targeted? We're not able to say at this point in time due to our investigation, but we still believe that. But we, like I said, we take a totality of everything that we're looking at.
How is a targeted incident complex when you're referring to 4 college students who were attacked in the middle of the night while sleeping in their beds? How many enemies do these 4 college students have? 90 interviews were conducted at this point. Some of these students didn't even have 90 Facebook friends. And law enforcement on November 20th, 2022, ruled out the roommates, Hoodie Guy, and the 911 callers, the people that were at the house when that call was made. 7 days into gathering information and without any forensic evidence, Moscow Police Department has ruled out people. So does that mean Moscow Police Department basically is taking the word or the words of those 90 interviewed? When and where was Hoodie Guy interviewed? Did Moscow Police Department ever ask the public to help them identify Hoodie Guy? How did Moscow Police Department figure out who, in fact, was Hoodie Guy?
Was the killer the 911 caller?
I will tell you no.
Can you clarify, you said it was made from the roommate's phone, but you didn't say the roommate made the call. So did the roommate make the call on the roommate's phone, or can you clarify if it was another individual who made the call?
Actually, if we could just go to this one first. And
Well, it's a follow-up, that's why I wanted to.
so what I'll say to that is it was made from the roommate's call, or phone, excuse me, and we're not going to divulge who made that call. It's part of our investigation still, and when we get ready to release that, we will.
Hi, Christina Corbin with Fox News. The male subject whom the women called, has he been ruled out as a suspect or person of interest?
Everything that we have taken from those calls, we have followed up on, we've cleared, and we believe that there's no connection there.
And now, the Moscow Police Department has cleared Jack D., Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, during press conference number 2 on November 20th, 2022, 7 days after the murders, with no forensic evidence tested, as well as during the initial gathering of information stage of an investigation.
Gotti Schwartz, NBC News. Just following up on the 911 call, you said that you don't believe that's the killer. Can you conclusively rule out the person that called 911 from inside the home as a suspect in this case?
Can you go ahead and just ask that one more time, please?
The person that was inside the home that called 911, that was not one of the roommates, can you conclusively rule that person out as a suspect at this point?
I don't think I said that it wasn't one of the roommates. I said that it was used with the roommate's phone.
I believe somebody asked if that was the killer, and you said no.
No, that's correct.
Was there someone there other than the two roommates when police responded to the home?
So will you clarify that for me?
You're not confirming a roommate called 911, but they used the roommate's phone. So was there someone else at the home other than those two roommates?
There was other friends that had arrived at the location.
How many? Everybody made the call.
Honestly, I'm not quite sure at this time, to be quite honest.
Do you guys have any idea if the killer's still within the community, or are you looking outside the community for the killer in terms of their physical location?
We are looking everywhere that evidence would lead us. I can't say if the person's here. I can't say what community the person's in. We're utilizing every resource we can to make that location of that individual. And part of that is the safety of our community is paramount, and that's why we brought in the resource that we brought in to keep our community as safe as we can.
Being so close to the border, does that make it kind of automatically an interstate investigation? Can you comment on that?
I cannot comment on that. I'm not even aware.
If you look in Washington at all, I guess, for...
We're looking everywhere. I'm going to take two more questions.
Do you still believe this attack was done by one perpetrator? And if so, how does one individual kill 4 people at night and not wake up the other 2 roommates?
Our investigation will continue to look at all avenues of that investigation. I cannot disclose any of that information. I don't even know that information at this point in time, and that's why we're continuing to investigate.
You don't know how this happened without the other 2 roommates hearing it or waking up or noticing?
We do not. One more question.
Hi, Angela Palermo, Idaho Statesman. In the press release yesterday, you confirmed that the victims were found on the 2nd and 3rd floors of the home. Can you say which of the victims were found where?
I'm not going to go ahead and disclose that information. They were found on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and that's as far as we're going to go with that part of the investigation too, because all those key.
So, what do they know? He literally said he doesn't know the answers to the media's questions, but people have been ruled out. This press conference is the reason web sleuths started doing their own research and reporting on their findings, as well as the family going public with interviews. With that said, Truth and Transparency did their own investigation, and that will be revealed in part 3. But first, here is the 3rd press conference. November 23rd, 2022. Also, this was the last day that Kaylee's dad heard from the Moscow Police Department when this was all put together on December 7th, 2022.
We still believe there's more information to be gathered, which will continue creating a window through which we view this case. We all want to understand why this happened and what drove someone to do this. The families of those involved and our entire community deserve to know. We ask anyone with any information related to what happened with these 4 who are in our community, their interaction with others, and whether they expressed concern or commented about someone or something strange, to get that information to us. Even if you don't believe it is relevant, investigators will review and determine if and how your information builds the picture. Sometimes what a video or picture doesn't show is equally as important as what might be there. Information on how to submit tips and updates on the investigation can be found on the Moscow Police Department webpage. We continue moving forward to understand why this occurred in our community and seek answers to bring justice for the victims and their loved ones, because they deserve it. I personally want you to know we care, and we will continue to work hard to get these answers for these individuals. At this time, I'd like to introduce Captain Roger Lanier for an update on what we can currently share about this investigation. update on what we can currently share about this investigation.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Roger Lanier with the Moscow Police Department. I want to assure you first off that the loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders. Investigators are prepared to work through the Thanksgiving holiday to continue their efforts. I also want to express our sincere appreciation to the Idaho State Police, the FBI, the University of Idaho, and the Latah County Sheriff's Office for their assistance. And I especially want to thank the community of Moscow for their outpouring of support through this incredibly difficult time. Today I'm going to recap in brief what we know. I'm going to provide some new information, and I'm going to address some rumors. On the evening of November 12th and into the early morning hours of November 13th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. after visiting a local bar and a street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were also out in the community at Sigma Chi, and they arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Two surviving roommates who were also out in the community arrived home at approximately 1 a.m. Later, on the morning of November 13th at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed. The call reported an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence, and a surviving roommate's cell phone was used. During that call, the dispatcher spoke to multiple people who were on scene. Moscow police officers responded and found two victims, two on the second floor and two on the third floor of 1122 King Road. The results of autopsies indicated that the four were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds, and there was no sign of sexual assault. We do not believe the following individuals were involved: the two surviving roommates, the male seen in a grub truck video circulating on the internet, a private party who drove Kaylee and Madison home, any of the individuals who spoke to the dispatcher on the 911 call. We're also aware of a male whom Madison and Kaylee had called several times the morning of November 13th, and we do not suspect that individual. Detectives have canvassed the neighborhoods looking for evidence, physical evidence, video surveillance, and they've contacted numerous residents to see if anybody may have seen or heard anything. They continue requesting tips that can be sent to our tip line or called in to our tip line. The specific areas that we're interested in are detailed on maps on our city website and our Facebook page, but as stated earlier, generally south of Taylor Avenue to Palouse River Drive, and the area west of US 95 over to the Arboretum. We have heard mention that Kaylee stated she may have had a stalker. Detectives have been looking into that, and to this point have been unable to corroborate the statement, although we continue to seek information and tips regarding that report. No suspects have been named or arrested, and we continue looking for what we believe to be a fixed blade knife used in the murders. We have not released the names of any of the subjects who spoke on the 911 call, and we have not released the call itself. Any online reports of the victims being tied and gagged are not accurate. Regarding the resources that we've put forth in this investigation, the Moscow Police Department has 4 detectives, 24 patrol officers, and 5 support staff dedicated to this investigation. The FBI has 22 investigators in Moscow and 20 additional agents assigned in various locations, as well as 2 members of the Behavioral Analysis Unit. The Idaho State Police has 20 investigators, a public information team, a forensic services and crime scene team, and 15 uniformed troopers who have been valuable in helping provide community patrols and safety patrols. We very much appreciate their support. This is our highest priority. It will remain our highest priority. We owe that to the families. At this time, I would like to introduce Colonel Kedrick Wills from the Idaho State Police.
The only new mention was that they were looking into a stalker for Kaylee. The only boyfriend or ex-boyfriend that was not publicly cleared was Maddie's boyfriend, Jake S.
James Torman Aldrich with the Argonaut. I have two questions, if that's all right. Firstly being what the police presence is going to look like after Thanksgiving break and how long that's going to last.
So I'll go ahead and answer. The police presence is going to be very heavy after the break. We have Idaho State Patrol that will also still be in the area, and you'll see a high impact of patrol officers and troopers, as well as Latah County Sheriff's Department personnel in the area.
And then secondly, will there be any possibility of the release of the 911 phone call, even in transcript form?
Not at this time. That's part of our investigation.
Frankie Beer, the Daily Evergreen. I guess the Moscow PD press release mentioned looking into hundreds of pieces of information about Kaylee's potential stalker. I was wondering what led you to believe she did have a stalker possibly, and why those pieces of information haven't come up with conclusive results.
I'm actually going to let Captain Lanier answer this question, okay?
Thank you, Chief. We obtained information through some of our interviews that Kaylee had made some comments about a stalker, so that's where that came from. We have followed up looking at specific time frames in specific areas of town. So far, we have not been able to corroborate it, but we're not done looking into that piece of information. Thank you.
Dan Springer, Fox News. If I can get Captain Lanier. Sir, why not tell the public who the target was? You've said that this was a targeted attack. Why not tell the public who was targeted? If it was multiple people, it would go a long ways to telling the public what you're looking for and who you're looking for, the type of person you're looking for. Why not do that to alleviate some of the fears out there in the community?
Well, first and foremost, we have the integrity of the investigation to preserve. And we feel like that information is integral to us and how we conduct our investigation. Releasing that to the public may or may not flood us with a lot of information that's not relevant or specific to what we're looking at.
Don't you want more information from the public?
We do want more information, but we don't want to put our investigation in jeopardy by releasing what we have. There's always a balance between what you're willing to release versus what you're trying to gather. We've told the public very clearly from the beginning that we're looking for a knife. We've told the public very clearly from the beginning that we believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
Lauren Patterson, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I see that the FBI set up a special web page just to collect digital information. I'm also curious if any of the investigators can speak to this. Curious if the Wi-Fi hotspot has been tapped at all. It's possible if the suspect had their phone on them, it may have pinged off the Wi-Fi in the residence. Has that been checked on at all?
As I stated, our investigation is looking at every avenue of every piece of evidence that we can. The FBI has given us a website for any downloads of video or anything, so we ask people, if you have any of that, to send it to us, please.
Thank you. Natasha Chen, CNN. I have a couple of questions here. One, in many homicide cases, the first hours, the first days are so incredibly crucial. Now that we're moving into a window that's further and further away from the incident. Does that concern you about the ability to arrest a suspect, or do you have information that you simply can't share with us that makes you confident that you're close to solving this?
I'm going to have the Colonel step up and address that, please.
Well, thank you for the question, and I would like to address it a little more globally than specifically. A little more globally here. Yes, as time goes on, I mean, we're time past the initial calls for service and the initial crime. However, we also, as time goes on, are able to process the forensics evidence, any forensics evidence that we may have collected, and so that helps us. And we're also able to process the tips that continue to come in, which may help us. And so, while time in one respect is not beneficial, in another respect it is, because it helps provide us with that whole picture with all of the information that we're gathering, whether it's evidence or tips or any other information that we're gathering. It may help us to provide a clearer picture, and so it may help answer those questions that we're seeking as well.
Hi, Angela Palermo, Idaho Statesman. I was wondering if there's any evidence that suggests the attacker visited the first floor where the 2 surviving roommates were.
That information will not be released at this time. It's part of our investigation, and as we stated earlier, there's many things that are involved in an investigation that we will release and things we won't.
Good afternoon, Ashley Soriano, Fox News. I have 2 questions. Have you considered the possibility of a murder-suicide? Is that something that you guys are considering right now?
That question has been asked previously, not at a press conference. It's certainly something that we looked at in the early part of the investigation. It is not something that we're looking at this time.
And I know some of the investigators' vehicles and police vehicles are coming in and out of the driveway. Do you think that potentially could disturb any tire marks or other evidence?
Yeah, so the question has been asked about why did the crime scene tape expand, and that's not uncommon. When the first officers arrived, they tried to cordon off what they thought was important. We immediately expanded that when the investigators got there to process the scene. And logically, as this progresses, and you've seen this through our press releases, we have expanded it to several areas of the city and have in fact canvassed entire neighborhoods. So we try very, very hard to uncover every single bit of evidence possible in an area before we move on to the next area. So yes, we've looked at everything that we think we need to look at in and around the crime scene at this point.
But do you believe that cars coming back and forth in the driveway, potentially like tire marks or foot marks that there could have been?
Well, it's a gravel parking area, so it would be hard to say that.
How are you folks holding up? How are your detectives and officers holding up? And Chief, you mentioned that detectives are prepared to work tomorrow on Thanksgiving, so is the expectation that they will be?
That is correct. We're going to have many detectives and agents.
At the conclusion of this press conference, all trust in the Moscow Police Department would be lost by the family of Kaylee Gonzalez. The families, just like the public, were hopeful to have some answers with the 3rd press conference. Sadly, that was not the case. The timeline: University of Idaho murders to be continued.